I've had the privilege to ride 51 different roller coasters in my lifetime, and for the second year running here on the channel, I'm going to present my top 10 favorites. This list has changed somewhat from a year ago, with new coaster additions and moving coasters around in my rankings. So before we get into the top 10, here are a few honorable mentions. First up is Silver Bullet from Knott's Berry Farm, which was previously ranked at number 10. I've enjoyed all the rides I've gotten on this B&M invert. It's a pretty long ride, has a unique layout because of the setting, and has a little bit of intensity at the end with those corkscrews and helix. It just got pushed out with some better coasters, finding their way into the top 10. Next is Medusa from Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. This is one of the better B&M floorless coasters you're going to find. It has a good layout and it has good length. It's also very smooth. I just couldn't quite find a spot for it in the top 10 this year. And finally, for the first time since I first rode it in 2020, Incredicoaster isn't a member of my top 10. After getting some more rides this year, I decided I liked some other coasters at that resort a little bit more than Incredicoaster, and we'll get to that right about now. Number 10, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, Disneyland. Last year's ranking, unranked. Big Thunder is just such a fun roller coaster from start to finish. Forces-wise, it's not anything too crazy, but you do have some good laterals throughout the majority of the layout and a few good pops of airtime as well. Ultimately, these coasters are ranked based on how much I have fun on each coaster, and Thunder Mountain is one that I always come off with a huge smile on my face. A couple other notes. One, this coaster has phenomenal rock work and phenomenal theming on and off ride. Number 2, this is a very smooth coaster, and that definitely helps. And number 3, the operations are fantastic. Thunder Mountain goes to show that you don't need to have crazy stats or crazy elements to be a super fun roller coaster. Number 9, Space Mountain at Disney's Magic Kingdom. Last year's ranking, unranked. Space Mountain is just such a fun roller coaster from start to finish. One of the things I love is all the surprise drops in the dark. If you sit in the back seat, you're going to get some great airtime. Even with those weird and slightly uncomfortable trains, it doesn't even matter, you still get thrown out of your seat multiple times. I'm more familiar with the Space Mountain at Disneyland, but one thing I like about this coaster in comparison to that one is the focus on drops. The version at Disneyland doesn't really have that many drops, basically just right-hand turns. But the version at Disney World really does a great job at that. I wasn't terribly excited about this coaster going into my trip in 2021, but it exceeded my expectations greatly, and it ended up being one of my favorite coasters. Number 8, Hyperspace Mountain at Disneyland. Last time's ranking, 8. For a brief explanation, I consider Hyperspace Mountain and Space Mountain as different coaster credits because the experiences are so different. While I wouldn't change Space Mountain to Hyperspace Mountain permanently, while Hyperspace Mountain is overlaid in the May the 4th Be With You season, it's a great coaster. It really is. You have an already fun coaster and then you add more effects and, in my opinion, slightly better music. It's hard to explain, but the coaster as Hyperspace Mountain really feels faster than normal Space Mountain. Maybe that's because of the music, maybe that's because of the visuals. It just feels so much more extreme. As I alluded to a few moments ago when discussing the other Space Mountain, the layout doesn't really have much to offer, so mixing it up with these visuals really does help a lot. Such a fun coaster. Number 7, Rock and Roller Coaster at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Last year's ranking, 6. Don't worry, we're almost through the Disney roller coasters. Once again, we have an indoor roller coaster at a Disney park. Like Space Mountain at Magic Kingdom, Rock and Roller Coaster exceeded my expectations when I rode it for the first time in April of 2021. The coaster has a pretty punchy launch and a couple of fun inversions. Plus, like Hyperspace Mountain, the onboard audio soundtrack by Aerosmith really works. It's not my forte for the type of music that it is, but for this roller coaster, it works very well. There are patches in the layout where it really isn't doing a whole lot, but that's okay because the music and the visuals keeps it going in my opinion. From what I recall, it's also pretty smooth, which is something to be appreciated for an old Vekoma looping coaster. A lot of old Vekomas are not smooth at all. Number 6, Expedition Everest, Disney's Animal Kingdom. Last year's ranking, 3. Now this is an impressive roller coaster in basically every sense of the word. This one cost $300 million, and it was well spent. Like some of the other coasters we've been talking about, there are stretches of this coaster that basically feel like a glorified mine train, but then you have some more intense sections like the backwards indoor helix. That moment, I would argue, could be considered the most intense moment on a Disney roller coaster. You definitely feel the G-force there. Then the layout finishes with some fun twists, turns, and drops outdoors and indoors. The layout is pretty good, but the theming is sensational. That's what set this ride apart. I think it could be the best themed coaster in the world, or at least in consideration. Number 5, Revenge of the Mummy at Universal Studios Hollywood. Last time's ranking, not available. Giant Dipper was pretty close, but ultimately this is the only new for 2023 credit to break into my top 10, and it's a fantastic roller coaster. Some of the elements could probably stand on their own, like the punchy launch, or the airtime hill halfway through the ride. But this coaster is all about the theming. It's indoors, it's so immersive. Before the ride even gets going, there's a couple of detailed dark ride sections that I wish lasted longer, and I love the theatrics surrounding the first launch with those warriors, or whatever you call them, dropping down from the ceiling right as you launch. It's epic. The theming is mixed throughout the actual layout as well. This is just such a good coaster, and I was going in pretty excited for it, but I walked away from our Universal Studios visit really loving this ride a lot more than I thought I would. Creepy theme and all, this ride is exceptional. Number 4, Railblazer at California's Great America. Last time's ranking, 4. This coaster is an absolute powerhouse from start to finish. It is bonkers. The pacing is some of the best on any coaster I've ever seen, and the elements hold up too. You've got great airtime on a couple of different spots, you've got fun inversions, and you've got a wild sense of speed. In regard to prime ride time, it's very short, it's only about half a minute, but I can look past that because that half minute is one of the best half minutes I've ever experienced. My only 2 rides on it came in June of 2021, shortly after the park opened, and I can only imagine how crazy it gets as the coaster warms up throughout the day. RMC just knows how to do it, and it's not the last RMC coaster we'll see on this list. Number 3, Accelerator, Knott's Berry Farm. Last year's ranking, 5. Accelerator, like Railblazer, is a powerhouse. It's an intense coaster. Additionally, it has a couple other similarities to Railblazer. Number 1, it's very short, but the prime ride time is used well. And number 2, it has phenomenal pacing. And number 3, it has great airtime. In the case of Accelerator, the airtime comes on the top hat. If you're sitting near the front, you'll float as you crest the hill, and if you're sitting in the back, you'll float the whole way down. Of course though, the standout element is the launch, 0 to 82 miles an hour in 2.3 seconds. It's really difficult to explain how that feels. It's incredible. I'm glad to hear this coaster is back open again after a long hiatus, and hopefully I can get back on it soon. It's amazing. Number 2, GhostRider, Knott's Berry Farm. Last year's ranking, 2. Wow, GhostRider is just such a sensational roller coaster in every sense. It's a wooden coaster by CCI that was modified by GCI. And I think those 2 elements work hand in hand. The layout from CCI is very well put together. You have a great mix of airtime, you have a great mix of laterals, and the pacing in the second half of the coaster is ridiculous. And then when GCI came in and added the new trains and retracked it and got rid of the mid-course brake run, it made it even better. I unfortunately was only able to snag 3 rides in 2021, but those 3 rides are very memorable. The 2 back row rides in the morning were a lot of fun, but then the night ride, even if it was in the middle of the train, is one of the craziest coaster experiences I've ever gotten. It's tough to explain how fast this coaster feels at night. GhostRider really warms up as the day goes on, and the elements really pop. You really feel like you're going to go flying off the track in the second half of the ride at night. There's no wonder why it's common to see this coaster have an hour-long wait or more, because that's how good it is. I would wait an hour for it any day. And finally, number 1, Joker, Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. Last year's ranking, 1. Yeah, this coaster still hasn't moved spots. In fact, getting some more rides this year further cemented it at that number 1 spot. Currently, it's still the only RMC hybrid I've been on, but even though people often criticize this as one of the weaker RMCs, it's my number 1 coaster, which just goes to show how strong RMC as a company really is. There are a few good spots at airtime, and I think the first drop is a little underrated. Not too many people talk about it, but with the steep angle and the twist to the right, if you ride in the back, you're going to get some great laterals and airtime combined. In addition to airtime, Joker also does a great job at hang time. You have a couple inversions that really levitate you out of your seat for multiple seconds. I really enjoyed the old roller coaster that Joker replaced, but there is zero doubt in my mind that Joker is a significant improvement than the old GCI coaster. A ton of fun, and as of right now, my favorite roller coaster I've ever ridden. So there you have it, my top 10 favorite roller coasters as of the end of 2023. If you would change anything about my list, let me know, and let me know why, and tell me what your favorite roller coasters are down in the comment section below. As I said, I've only ridden 51, but I'm very thankful for all these experiences. So in the meantime, thank you all for watching, Merry Christmas! I'll see you in the next one.